This is part of the Noble Committee exercise for all of us in the faculty. So, for today's workshop or today's discussion, we will be talking about introduction and concept of OBE. It is very important for us to understand this because all of us are involved in multiple tasks regarding curriculum reviews, and other sort of things pertinent to our programs. So we have received a lot of comments, a lot of suggestions from the reviewers or examiners about this. So it's time for us to sort of like improve our operation with a better documentation, with a better understanding among us. And since we have a lot of new staff who just joining the faculty, so I think it's good for all of us to know this. So bear with me for those who are been here for quite some time in who are seniors. You might have know everything that I'm gonna do today, but for those who are new, this probably totally new for you. So the objective today is to talk about OBE and its introduction and concept. Okay, let me start. Let me do this. Just hang on a second. Okay, so um, the OBE workshop series, I think this is the first series that is held, and this is only about introduction and concept. And we will talk about a little bit on the curriculum design at the end of this session. And then OBE workshop series number 2, we'll be talking about constructive alignment, which I think the most important here. And then number 3 will focus solely on the assessment, where we will be talking about how to do assessment, how to map, how to ensure the assessment is aligned with what we have planned in our curriculum. And then lastly, number 4, I think number 4 is the least that we know so far, including myself, but we will try our best to do this together, and especially with the closing the loop of the course and also of the program. So hopefully I will take the allocated time today to explain to you about number 1, which is curriculum design based on the OBE. Please feel free to ask me anytime. Give me a shout if you want. Okay, I'm using Padlet for this, and later on the recorded video will be made available in the YouTube. I will give the what we call this, the link later on too. So the Padlet is just the materials that we have, including my slides today, will be available. Is available in the Padlet. All right. So just to begin with, maybe some of you are asking about OBE. What is OBE? What is going on? And for your information, OBE has been used in many countries. However, Malaysia is not the first one to use OBE, but we are not the last one anyway. So in 2010, our faculty has started to gauge with OBE, and in 2013, our curriculum is fully OBE oriented. Okay, and in global perspective, we also benchmark with some renowned guidelines, especially from the UK, from Australia, and also from the European countries. So we are quite well versed in terms of the implementation in the country, but in the faculty, I think we need to work harder to ensure that all of us understand the whole concept of OBE. So today, please feel free to ask me if you have any question. I will try to answer. if I can. Okay. So what is OBE? OBE is actually a method or a concept or even approach uh, of teaching the student. So it focuses on the outcome. Before this, you might have come across objective, for example, course objective. So in OBE, we do not use course objective, but we are using course outcomes. So if we compare between course objective and course outcome, course objective is actually is like a plan of a lecturer to deliver the course. However, when we change to OBE, the course is oriented as such, we set an outcome for the course. So that's the big difference there. So instead of lecturer focus, now with the OBE is a student focus. So the outcomes are actually what we need to see what our student have at the end of the program or at the end of the course. So these outcomes actually being set into a certain criteria whereby we are following the three sets of domains, which is the cognitive, psychomotor, and also the um, affective. Okay, so this one is actually the pillar of OBE. All right. When we set about outcome, achieving the outcome, we need to set a line with the outcome, with the assessment, with the learning materials, with the teaching methods. So everything is actually linked together. That's what we are going to do in series number 2, which we call course alignment or constructive alignment. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in the second series. But now for today, we just want to learn about this concept first so that we know exactly what to do for the next series. Okay. And if you see the series number 4, we will be talking about continual quality improvement, which is CQI. And this one is actually as is part of the OBE curriculum. So we as a lecturer is directly involved with the CQI. And this CQI actually quite important for us to review the curriculum. So we are going to do a major curriculum review for BDS and perhaps for other programs, postgraduate programs. So it is best for us to look into these aspects too. So this one will be a series number 4. I will explain about how the curriculum is conducted from the beginning. Okay. So as I mentioned just now, OBE shifts the paradigm from the teacher-centered to the student-centered learning. So the new methods in teaching and learning approach is actually more on the student rather than us teaching at the front of the class. So that's why we have introduced a lot of other teaching methods. For example, flipped classrooms. We introduce blended learning, okay, online learning. All those things is actually trying to satisfy the needs of student-centered learning. Student-centered learning, I will explain a little bit more later, is part of the OBE curriculum. Okay, and this OBE is actually measuring, it focuses in measuring the student performance, and this student performance or outcomes are clearly demarcated in our curriculum. So whatever we do in the class is actually trying to reach or try to achieve the outcomes intended for every single course or even topic. Okay, so that one we will understand better if we look out into the few example or samples of the curriculum. So if you have your curriculum document right now, maybe you can flip over and look at what you have, and you probably understand better what I'm trying to say here. But anyway, I'm just going to explain a few more things. Okay, next. So today, for the learning outcomes today is to describe the concept philosophy, and key principles underpinning outcome-based education. I'm not talking in terms of the whole philosophy or pedagogical aspects, but just, probably quite superficial, but it's enough for us to understand. Okay. Number two is to explain the various learning approaches, strategies, and components that support implementation of OBE. And then number three, appraise the formulation and alignment of learning outcome across program structures, courses, and assessment. So number three is actually redundant a little bit with number two series, but I will just try to, just try to get it started and then see what we can do in the second series later on. All right. So we have more time to understand the alignment later on. Okay, so these are the three learning outcomes, and as I show it to you right now, this is what you should show to our student every time you want to start your lecture. So every time you start your lecture to your students, please do show them this specific learning outcome for every topic that you are teaching. Okay, so we will be talking about this more later on. All right. So this is I just would like to introduce you to you those who are new to the university. In Malaysia, we have a standard, or we have a regulatory body which is MQA. Okay, MQA is Malaysian Qualification Agency, which is under Ministry of Higher Education. And this MQA is actually regulates the uh, education system or education programs in the country. So what we have in Malaysia is called Malaysian Qualification Framework, MQF. So maybe some of you who have done a lot of curriculum document, you probably have heard this MQF a lot of times. So what does MQF really do? Yes. Any question? No. Okay. Malaysian Qualification Framework actually try to set national classification of qualification, levels of learning achievement based on learning outcomes, and prescribed academic load at each level. So they set a standard for us to produce a program in every higher education institution. Okay, so we need to follow this because this outline actually based on the legislation. So the legislation says no program will be accredited unless it is in compliance with the framework. So not or not, we have to follow this framework. Okay, and we are not just following this framework per se, but we have other regulatory body that we need to follow, which is Malaysian Dental Council for all the dental programs. For medical, they have to follow Malaysian Medical Council. Okay, so for us, MEQF is part of what we need to follow, and then another one is Malaysian Dental Council, UITM itself. So just to show you, the next one is the framework itself. So for us, for a university or any higher institution to produce a program, they have to achieve certain criteria. Okay, for example, if we want to produce a bachelor degree, we need to have 120 graduating credits, and that would allow us to call the program as bachelor degree. And the level that they assign to each of the graduating credit is based on the level of graduating education portfolio. So if I ask you what is the bachelor's degree MQF level, so the answer is 6. Okay, the answer is 6. If we are going to produce a master degree by coursework, we should comply with a 40 credit graduating credit, and the MQL level is 7. Okay, all right. So this is what we have in our faculty. We even have diploma in our faculty. So our diploma should follow this. MQL level 4, graduating credit is number 90. Is 90 credit hours. Okay. So this is quite common for everyone to understand the whole concept of this. If we are going to introduce another program, so we need to go and map our content to this academic level. Okay. And what does the graduating credit really means? I will show and I will explain to you perhaps in the next series because it's quite a lot to explain in 1 hour and a half. Okay, so I hope you get some ideas about this. So our program for our BDS, we actually did not follow 120 because this bachelor's degree 120 is meant for for program who does not have regulate governance, the body macam Malaysia Dental Council, Malaysia Medical Council, Malaysian Pharmacy Council, you know. So this council sets their own graduating credits. So if our Bachelor of Dental Surgery, we are actually more than 120 graduating credits. We are higher than this, okay? And so does the medical, so does the pharmacy. So in a way, we have to follow our council straight away, okay? And this one is actually for everything else, but we still follow some of these, what we call it, some of these framework. For example, we still under MQF level 6, okay? And we are still using the name of the program, but the name of the program also dictated by the council. Okay, so I hope that does not really confuse you. So the next one is outcome OBE itself. So OBE is actually talking about the curriculum design and teaching that focus on the student, what student can actually do after they are taught. So there are a few things for few focuses on these questions. What should the students learn? Okay, so we need to think what the student should learn and what is the motivation for the student to learn it. So in this concept, the motivation for the student to learn it, maybe instead of telling them the theory, we throw them questions. That is the motivation for them to find out the answers. And maybe some of you have done flip learning or flip class. So that is part of the motivation. So if you want to translate this to a later teaching methodology, okay? So it's a teaching methodology. All right, next, how can the academic institution and its resources help student learning it? So this is in if you have MQA visit to check your program, they actually look into this matter quite seriously. So what do you supply to your student for them to learn? So we need to support the learning because this is student centered learning. So we put all the resources and let them learn on their own, sort of on their own, and at their own pace as well within certain time limit lah. So they will ask you what do you prepare. So we always answer, or there's a library, okay, there is U Future, there is a handbook, there is references that we put up in our U Future, you know. So those are considered as resources to help the student to learn. And then lastly, how will it determine what the student have learned? So that is about assessment. So how do we assess is very vital to ensure we have achieved the outcome. Okay, so we need to assess whatever outcome that we have to put in. So the concept here is a measurable outcome. So whatever outcome that we put in the learning outcome, okay, in the learning outcome, it should be measurable, even for a very a bigger knowledge, a bigger perspective. We need to think about how to measure. So we will look at the PEO, PLO, CLO, and SLO, how to measure them. Okay. So this one is actually a core business for OBE. So all these four are the core business of OBE. Next, this is our references based on this OBE concept. What he said is education that is outcome based is a learner centered, results oriented system founded on the belief that all individuals can learn. So basically, we try to stimulate their learning power by having a lot of resources, by having a lot of methods for them to learn. And we need to motivate them to learn. And then at the end, we need to know whether they have learned or not. Okay. So these are the concepts in OBE. And just to show you about the whole structure of OBE. How do we see the OBE as a bird's eye view? We need actually a lot of things, a lot of involvement from various parties across the system. Okay, so if you look at on the very left here, we do have industry and professional organizations or even stakeholders input and feedback. So if you do the accreditation documentation, you will see this a lot, right? So why? Because this is part of the OBE structure. So why we need them? Because we want to ensure the student that we produce is according to the required or requirement of the market at that time. Okay, the requirement of the market at that time. So how do we obtain the industry and professional organization input and feedback? There are few ways of doing it. So we will see that from various series of workshop, and you will appreciate how much information that we can get from them. Okay, so according to the industry, professional organization, and stakeholders feedback, then we will lay out the outcomes. So the main outcomes actually have to be mapped to few things. The first one is the mission and vision of university. So I'm sorry, the MUKF is actually the university that I took. Um, so the mission and vision of, for us, the mission and vision of UITM and the faculty. Okay, so that will be the top level tier. And then our program objective is now called program PLOs. So it will be mapped all the way there. And sometimes some universities, they have values. Okay, values. What are the values that they have in the what we call this, in the program? We also have it, but we translate it in PLOs. Okay, because our PLO is heavily regulated by Malaysian Dental Council, so we have enough to say in the PLO. We don't have to create more things, that just make things complicated. So now we can just focus on the PLO. Before PLO is actually program objective, which is PEO. We call it program educational objectives. I will show you later what is all about. And then after the PLO, we will map to the course learning outcome, CLO. Okay. And below CLO, I mentioned to you just now, is actually specific learning outcome. That is about the topic of each topic of the course, okay, in the course. And then when you set all these outcome, it should be aligned, and we will see the alignment of these outcome in our next session. And once you ensure this is all aligned, then you start to do course planning and delivery. Okay, cost planning and delivery. If you notice, we actually using the top-down approach. So what is the outcome? And then we will work from there all the way down. Okay, all the way down. Then only we have cost planning and delivery. Then we work on the syllabus, we work on the teaching methods, we work on the activities, and definitely the assessment. Okay, and after we have done all this, okay, we done the cost assessment, we have seen the program assessment at the end of the program, and then institutional assessment, how we conduct the whole program, how we conduct the, what we call this, the teaching and learning. And this is part of the CQI. Okay, this is part of CQI. This is where the external examiner comes in. This is where the stakeholder comes in to give some feedback about our students. Okay, and then from there we will go back to the outcomes if we need to change or need to improve. So it goes in a cycle. Okay, for the outcome based education. So if we talk about CQI or internal quality, this is part and partial of the activities that we will do every single year. Okay, next. Okay, what are the steps in OBE? Okay, for example, if you want to make a new course, if you want to make a new program, so you need to start from the beginning. So think of the expected outcome. Okay, so this one goes well with the previous slide to say that the first one you should do is from the top. So the top is outcomes, what you want your student to achieve. And then only you design the curriculum, and then you need to implement the curriculum with appropriate teaching methods. And then after you teach them, you need to assess student by learning outcome. So we cannot ask questions beyond the learning outcomes. Okay, for example, if we teach them how to do surgery on the third molar. For the third molar, we cannot ask them how to do surgery on the BSSO, sagittal split, osteotomy, if you don't ask them. So something like that. We have to ask within the scope of learning outcomes. Okay. So that's why we have our vetting. So our vetting has a proper template to ensure that we do not go beyond that. So it always have to map to SLO and CLO. Okay. All right. This is about learning approaches. So for the learning approaches, we are concerned about student-centered learning. There are other approaches, okay? And for your information, our curriculum is actually student-centered learning and competency-based learning. And as you notice, we have competencies, right? When we do our handbook, there are competencies that are embedded in the handbook so that the student knows what are the expected competency from the course. Okay, and then we also have patient-centered learning, and this one is not as strong as student-centered learning and competency-based. The medical curriculum, they would have more on the patient-centered learning. For us, yes, we do, but it's not as strong as them. And when we talk about patient-centered learning, the approach is slightly different, whereby they learn a lot from patient. We are trying to do that now in our items, whereby the patient can also participate, giving them feedback. So starting next year, perhaps our patient can give feedback to our student via items app, and the student will get that feedback, and the mentor also can read what the patient has commented. All right. I hope that will be a good opportunities for our student to improve themselves throughout the program. Okay. So the student-centered learning, what does it mean is we are trying to put the student at the center of learning perspective rather than us teaching more at the front of the class. So for teacher-centered, traditionally teachers own the knowledge and conveys to the student. So it's a one-way kind of thing. So the teacher brings the content and the answers into the classroom, and whereby the student-centered is student trying to learn by themselves and also coached by the teachers or lecturers. And we need to ask questions and provides any guidelines or anything that they need to be based on, but let them talk more rather than us talk more. So if you want to translate this into a daily teaching practice, what you can do is you tell them to read first before coming to class. And in the class, what you can do is you can do some activities like seminars. You give them question, they answer the question. Or if For example, if they have formulas that they need to apply, then give them scenarios, that could be part of the teaching and learning method. So if you do that, you can actually replace your traditional lecture methods. So that is considered um, e-compliance. Okay, so you can do that in the class. Every lecturer has its own creativity, so please do use your creativity. You can even use your apa tu, the online teaching apps, so you can do that. Doesn't matter what you like, I mean, doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can use it for your student, please, by all means, you can use it. All right, you don't have to be at the front of the class and talk for the whole duration of the session. All right, so that is student centered learning. And the concept for OBE, we keep um, thinking about what we need to do, what we need to apply, so we have to know that the student must um, know the outcome. What student must know what they need to know. So we need to tell them what they need to learn. Okay, so how do we tell them? SLO. So at the beginning of your lecture, you have SLO, right? And also in the handbook, you also put the SLO. So that is actually OBE compliance already. So you give them no, and they have that all the time with them. So there's no what we call this, no questions about them not having uh, guidance from us. So we have given them all what they need to know, and we will from time to time monitor and guide them. That's all. All right. So they have been given some sort of guidance throughout the program. All right. And then the students' progress is based on demonstrated achievement. So you are encouraged to monitor their progress by several means. For example, in clinic, we can see their logbooks, we can print out the progress report, see what they have done. And in the class seminars, we can see how they perform in every activities. So this is part of it. Our faculty has what we call it mentor mentee, so you can also monitor from there as well. So mentor mentee feedback or input, the student input is actually quite important for us to allow our system to understand what is actually the problem that they are having from the program itself. Okay, and then multiple instructional and assessment strategies need to be available. So we try to get away from the paper-based examination. We definitely can do paper-based if we have cognitive element in our curriculum. However, we do encourage to have multiple methods which can be applied. And these methods actually should address the outcomes. We will learn more about that in the assessment in series number 3. So this assessment should be not easy, but should be enough to measure the outcome that you intended student to have. Okay. And then adequate time and assistance need to be provided so that each student can reach their maximum potential. So we need to consider the time because our students, our dental student, has a lot of things to do from day to day basis. Okay. So we need to consider if we are giving them assignment, and those assignment should have a considerable amount of time given prior to the submission. So be considerate, but at the same time you need to gauge them how much time that they require. Okay. So these are based on educational concept, okay, of OBE. So you will see this from time to time how we play around with the OBE's concept. And the learning principles of OBE, we need to have clarity of focus. So student knows exactly what they need to do. Okay, we cannot give them a vague instruction like what to learn. So for example, okay, you learn about investigation, but you did not tell them what kind of investigation that they need to learn. Okay, so they have to be focused what they need to learn, so they know exactly where to find. If you do not teach them, if you give them the outline of it, they probably can find from the resources provided. Okay, so that is what we need to do. And then design down is what I mentioned to you. We design the curriculum from the top, which is the learning outcome, all the way to the CQI. So for the to the assessment. So that is the design down meaning. Okay. And then we need to have high expectations. When we give all the resources to our student, we need to have high expectations. So it's not to say that we want all of them gets A in the what we call this in the exam, but high expectation means all of them achieve the outcome at the end of the course or at the end of the program. Okay, some student they wanted to reach the minimum level of the outcome or minimum level of the result, for example, or they just want to reach C. C is the lowest before the fail, right? So how do we encourage them to move further up, not just C? So we need to think about motivation. So we were talking about motivation just now. So what kind of motivation that we can provide to them? So in our faculty, as we know, we have a lots of awards that we give to the students, at the end of the program, which is like the pro after the pro exams, and also during the graduation. These high expectations should be reciprocate with certain awards or certain achievement recognition for our students. So now in our faculty, from the e-portfolio, we ask the student to um, what we call this to store all the activities that they have done. For example, yesterday when we had e-portfolio training with the year three, they enter Silat, they enter Taekwondo. We ask them to put everything in the e-portfolio. So they know how much they have achieved in their life so far. And that could be part of the motivation. Okay. So next, very, very soon, the mentor will look at the e-portfolio and the mentor also will realize how much your mentee has done, how much your mentee have achieved, and what is the potential of your mentee. Can they go further? Can they be pushed harder or can be pushed forward? So high expectation from them is a must, but with certain limit lah. We cannot push them all the way through if we know the limit is somewhere there. We need to gauge the ability as well. So high expectation is very much highlighted in OBE learning principles. Okay, and then lastly, the expanded opportunities. Um, the expanded opportunities really means that we have given them a few opportunities to excel, few opportunities to show to us that they have achieved the outcome. So we have done this in our curriculum, and we have done this by means of continuous assessment. So in continuous assessment, we have many types of assessment that we uh, calculate the marks and we gather all the marks that contribute to the final marks of their professional examination, isn't it? So for example, many of us have 40% of continuous assessment. So out of 40% of the continuous assessment, um, we have probably four or five types of assessment counted in the 40%. For example, 10% from the logbook, 10% from the semester exam, 10% from the presentation, and also 10% from the case presentation. So that is to answer the opportunities given to them to excel. So they have various methods for them to score, because not every student have a talent of a certain set of criteria. So for example, they do better in terms of communication, they do better in terms of writing, they do better in terms of teamwork, they do better in terms of verbal command or whatever it is. So we have given them a lot of opportunities to excel. Okay, so this is what expanded opportunities really means. So we may not realize, but we already have this learning principle embedded in our curriculum right now. It's just that we need to recheck again when we do the curriculum review. Do we need to improve further? Okay, for example, the expanded opportunities and higher expectation. Do we need to improve further? But I think for our faculty right now, probably we can focus on the design down, because when we look at the learning outcome, the method of exam probably does not really address the learning outcome. So maybe we can work together and see if we could improve that, and we can sort of like have a better assessment style, or better teaching delivery, okay, or education delivery for our students. So those are the things that I think we can do together as a team, okay, as a team in our faculty. All right. This is student-centered learning, SCL. This is taken from a paper, so the photo is quite vague, actually, not that sharp. Anyway, when we talk about student-centered learning in our OBE, maybe some of you have heard about the HOTS, HOTS, okay, HOTS, okay, high order thinking skills. So high order thinking skills is actually mandated by the Ministry of Higher Education for all higher education in the country to achieve. Okay, so if we translate into OBE, OBE using certain learning taxonomies. For us, we are using Bloom's learning taxonomies. And if we say HOTS, that means C5, C6, C4, C5, and C6. So it starts from analysis to the evaluation. Okay, so C5, C4, C5, C6, C1, C2, C3, we call it LOTS, LOTS, lower order thinking skills. And it depends on the program itself, how far you want to go with this. For BDS, MBBS, definitely HOTS is the way to go, because we want our student to be independent in making clinical decisions and independent in making treatment plan for our patients and do the treatment actually. So HOTS is actually to the focus for our curriculum. Anyway, other things that involve in the student-centered learning is actually teacher's role. And I have explained a little bit about teacher's role, how we play our role in teaching our student. For example, if the student are quite weak in certain areas, maybe we can do something about it without leaving them behind. Okay, if the student we found that is quite left behind, maybe we have to do something. As part of system, we have mentor mentee again, and then the student also know where to go if they have problem, but the problem is student doesn't want to go, right? So we probably have to take a little bit of proactive role in terms of approaching them or engage with them to do better. Okay, and then learners empowerment, LEP. LEP literally means that they should know what they want to do. Okay, for example, they want to learn something, they go to the library, for example. If they couldn't find something from the library, what they need to do. So they know they can go to the librarian, and the librarian can find the book that they want from other library. So that is learners empowerment. They know where to get, they know what to do. Okay. For our postgraduate students, the only thing I can see the main problem is when they do not find the articles, the full articles, right? So they use Sci-Hub pun tak boleh, all those things. And I have given them the email address that they can actually request for any articles that they unable to obtain and get it for free from our library. So our library will help them out to get the article for free. Okay. So the learners empowerment is actually quite an important aspects in OBE. And then we have learners engagement, how they take role, how they play a role in our learning. Okay, this one actually we have done it. If you do not realize, we have PBL. Okay, we have PBL. So LEP and LEG actually um, done in PBL. So PBL is quite important for student-centered learning. So we are actually the supervisor or the guidance there, just watching them doing the right thing. Okay. I've talked about assessment just now, quite a bit, but we will be doing this more in the session number 3. So probably I'm just gonna leave it there for a while, and then we will see other things too. Approaches. I mentioned to you about the approaches that we have. Student learning, student centered learning is all about student, and if you want to do patient centered learning for those who having a patient in the ward or just patient attending to the dental clinic. You can take patient feedback, you can get the patient to be part of the learning, and it's a bit difficult to do this because we need to carefully plan so that the patient welfare is taken care of. Sometimes they do not realize patient have a lot of burden when they do this. For example, patient as part of their case presentation, patient has to be there for like 3 hours, take photos, but nothing is done for the treatment. So this one has to be done in a proper manner so that the patients are not suffering lah, or do not get any benefit out of it, right? Okay, so this student centered learning also look at the collaboration. So kita ada collaboration, right, from other faculty. So use that as part of your student centered learning. Some of us have collaboration with other faculty in the teaching. So please use that by all means. Get their lecturer to do some what we call this engagement with them, like a talk or teach some of the topics, what we can do for postgraduate students actually to have for a least for least amount of budget. Maybe we can do online discussion. The student can present their case online, and after they present the case, we can get other students to comment or to give feedback, and this is all free because, it's done online. So maybe we can do that among our postgraduate student. All right. So we have so many postgraduate students, so we have to make use of that resources. Okay, so that is example of the student centered learning. Next, we will cover this more. I hope I can finish this within time. Shouldn't be too long. Okay, so we will look at the learning outcome. So you have heard learning outcome many, many times as of now. Learning outcome is a statement of what a learner is expected to know, understand, or be able to do as a result of a learning process. So when you do a learning outcomes, it is measurable. Okay, it is measurable and can be achieved within certain time. Okay, and it should be logical. It should be logical. Okay, for example, in sports, if you mention the student need to do a high jump of 4 meters, you know that is impossible. For example, tak tahu 4 meters tu tinggi macam mana. 4 meters if the world record is only 3 meters, but you put your student 4 meters, that is not easily achievable. So you cannot do that. Okay, you cannot put that as a learning outcome. Okay. Next, so this is the different level of learning outcome. We are getting more serious right now because this is where you can see in your curriculum. Okay, so I mentioned about program objective. So now we call it program educational objective. So program educational objective is actually attached to the program. So in our faculty, we have at least 14 programs, 10 postgraduate program coursework, uh, 2 undergraduates and 2 or 4 research punya two research programs, and every single program they have PEO. Okay, program educational objective. Moving down, after the PEO, we have PLO. So most of you have heard of PLO if you are doing a documentation for accreditation. So this PLO is set by certain criteria. For us, it is set by our program standard. Even like for BDS, for diploma, for the doctor in programs. Okay, so all of them, all these program has PEO and PLO. And the MOHI one, actually MOHI, learning outcome, they have 9. Okay. But they keep changing about the learning outcome. So we will see the latest one later on. All right. And then once we talk about program, of course, in the program, there are few courses that supports the program. So for our BDS, program. Just take the example for BDS. I think we have around 14 courses, if I'm not mistaken. Betul ke Datin? 14 courses plus the university courses. So that are the courses under a single program. For Doctor in program, if you look at the whole structure, the Doctor in program, I think you will have 2 core courses, 1 thesis. I think 1 thesis. That's it. 3 or 4. I think in every Doctor in programs. So those are considered as courses. So each of the course will have their own CLO. Okay, will have their own CLO. And then in the same course, they have topics, right? They have topics. So each of the topics will have its own SLO. Okay. Uh, Later on, we will learn about how to formulate all this. Okay, during the curriculum design or mapping or constructive alignment series later on. So we have PEO, PLO, CLO, SLO. Let's see what is the intended things apa tu, related to it. Okay, for program educational objective, you can find this in the handbook. And those who are doing handbook, I already put the PEO for you to put it for your own program. Okay, so the PEO, we need to measure as well. So for the PEO, we can measure the graduates 4 to 5 years ataupun 3 to 5 years after graduation. Okay, after graduation. For example, 3 to 5 years of graduation, we would like to say our student, for BDS student, they have opened their own clinic, they are successful, what we call this, uh, entrepreneur, means that they have opened up clinic. Okay, but when we put successful, the word successful, how we define successful, so it's a bit difficult, right? So we cannot use perkataan word successful in our learning outcome because it's quite subjective how to define successful. Just like understand, okay, it's a bit difficult for us to measure. Okay, for to measure the PEO, we can do alumni survey, we can do employer survey. So how to do that? We will find the email address of every alumni that we have, and then we will send the survey through the email, through the WhatsApp, or whatever means that we think possible to them. and then they will actually say, oh, I have achieved this in my life. I have opened up 3 clinics. I have uh, followed my apa tu, I have done my master program, those kind of thing. And then for the employer survey, how to measure the PEO, have our student achieve what we put in the PEO if our student as an employee. Okay. um, so UITM, one of the UITM outcomes or UITM intention is our student not to be an employee, but to be an employer instead. That's why we have a very strong entrepreneurship program in our university. So we encourage them to be an employer instead of employee. So we can have the employee survey, but at the same time, we can have a better survey to measure them as an employer as well. Okay. All right. What about PLO? PLO is dictated by the program standards. Okay. Program standard is actually made by the Malaysian Dental Council for every single program. In our faculty, there are only 3 programs that is not regulated by Malaysian Dental Council. Only 3. First is Diploma of Dental Surgery Assistant. The program standard is actually by the NQA, by the Allied Health Sciences Board. And for the Masters by Research, PhD by Research is not under MDC, Malaysian Dental Council. But the rest is under Malaysian Dental Council, and they all have program standards. So we need to refer to the program standards, okay, for the learning outcomes, intended learning outcomes, okay. And definitely the Ministry of Higher Education has put up the guideline for the learning outcome. So the Dental Council also work based on that too. Okay, so you will see some similarities, and it goes well with the national framework later on. So how to assess the student have achieved learning outcome? Definitely from the formative and summative assessment. So I will be talking about formative and summative assessment later on. What does it really mean? So we will look into our document as well. All right. And then for the CLO, all of us are quite well versed with the CLO and SLO because we are working on this all the time for the topic, for the exams, So CLO is upon course completion, whereas PLO is upon graduation. They complete the study. We can measure them. Have they achieved the program learning outcome? Okay. For CLO, we can assess after they complete the course. Do they achieve what the course intended them to achieve? All right. And then the lowest one is SLO, specific learning outcome, which is the learning outcome for every topic that we have. Okay. Every topic we have, there is SLO. And we use SLO to map to our exam question, isn't it? So SLO, and then we map to CLO. In the future, very, very soon, when we do CQI, we have to map to PLO because we want to know whether the whole program is actually achievable, it has achieved or not, the whole program learning outcome has achieved. All right, so those are the things that we need to improve from time to time. Okay, so all these assessment are actually formative and summative assessment. Okay, so we will learn about that later on. Okay, let me move. Okay, this is program educational objective. PEOs are specific attributes expected in graduate within 3 to 5 years, okay, during their career and professional life. And this one, actually, our faculty have made up quite a bit for few programs. So please do have a look what PEOs that we have for every program. Okay, so for those program directors, I think you are well versed with these PEOs, and I think at this time, we are able to measure the PEO because some of the programs, their first graduates is actually more than 5 years already or 3 years already. Okay, so you now can start to measure the PEOs for your program. All right. And how to measure this? There are a few ways we can do this later on. Okay. And these attributes are consistent with the mission and vision of UITM. So Institute of Higher Learning is actually the university. So UITM. Okay. Next, the PLO. So for the PLO, it's a little bit complicated when we look into assessment perspective because our assessment actually has to map to PLO. So when we map to PLO, we need to ensure that all the PLO are addressed in our program. And at the end of the program, we have achieved all the PLOs. For example, I'm just going to give you some examples, not one example right now. Um, for the CQI, if you can remember, the last step of the OBE is the closing the loop, whereby we measure our course is actually berjaya, successful or not, right? By having data that our student has achieved. So we have KPI to measure that. Okay, we have KPI, but the percentage here I just put as an example, not for our faculty. Perhaps I think Dr. Siti Mariam can answer this, but this one is KPI for the PLO attainment. So for those who have heard about PLO attainment but doesn't really know what PLO attainment is, we will discuss this in the number 4. Okay, series number 4. And at the beginning of the program, we will put KPI for every PLO. For example, we would say 75% out of total student should achieve a minimum of 50% marks for each PLO at the end of the program. So we need to gather all marks from assessment that map to the each PLO. Okay, when we gather the marks that map to each PLO, and those marks should has achieved 50% of the total, and 70%, 75% of the student get 50%. So if we do that, if we get more than 75%, we have achieved our KPI. Is it a bit complicated for Friday afternoon? Never mind. If you don't understand this, we can do in series number 4. So I'm just trying to say that uh, how do we measure our PLO as part of the uh, quality audit, quality assessment? Okay, so we call it closing the loop. So the loop is in a round shape. So this one is going back to the outcomes. Okay, let's say we do not achieve 75% of the total student that has minimum 50%, there's something that need to be done. For example, in curriculum review, we may need to revise the learning outcome, whether or not the learning outcome is too difficult to achieve, or the skill set offered is not relevant, or the skill set offered is not something yang we need them. Okay. Or even we can blame on the assessment. Okay, anyone ada angkat tangan? Yes,
Uh,
Mohammed.
uh, yes, Dr. Ne, Prof. Ne, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask, the 75% is only regarding the exams, I mean the exams mark, or also the clinical barring?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mohammed. I think that's very good question. 75% is actually the total marks. No, sorry, 50%. The 70% is the number of student, right? But 50% marks for each PLO means whatever assessment that is mapped to that particular PLO, we will calculate all the marks, and the total marks should have more than 50%. Then we would say has achieved more than 50% for that particular PLO. So that is the KPI, Mohammed. Okay, so we have to maybe because PLO is a program, right? So maybe out of
Yes.
14 programs, out of our 14 courses in our BDS program. I'm just taking example of BDS program. So out of 14 courses in our BDS program, maybe I would say, let's say 8 courses map to PLO number one. Okay, map to PLO number one. But what what assessment in each course that map to PLO number one? So we will extract that courses, that assessment from each of the course that map to PLO number one, and we will gather the marks. Then we will know the marks is 50% and above or 50% and below. Then we will calculate that as percentage of achievable, achieve set of standards. Okay, so it would involve many courses that map to the PLO. I will give you the what we call this, the table that explain about this later on. Maybe we can understand better about this. So this is actually via the blueprint, for the course blueprint. Okay, and for our faculty, I would say personally, we do not have a good CQI mapping yet. We still need to figure out. Other universities, what they have done is they use a system. They built their own system to measure these KPIs. Okay, but for our university, I think during Prof. Aida as a dean, she showed us to calculate the PLO attainment, right, using the Excel calculator. That one can be used. Actually, the whole university, they are using a system, but we cannot because our curriculum is different than others, definitely. So some items that we cannot follow. That's why we have to do manual. But I think we are looking forward to have our own later on so that it tally to what we need. Okay, so we'll see if the noble committee members can come up with that as such, so that easier for us to do. Okay, is that okay, Muhammad? I will get back to that in series number 4 later on. Okay, so these are the program learning outcome. You can see this in the MQF. So the older version, they don't have digital skills. Okay, they don't have in digital skill, they don't have numeracy skill. Now they have added, and they rename few of the things. Okay, and for now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in total. Functional work skills is actually divided into 6: practical, interpersonal communication, digital, numeracy, leadership. All right, so we have all the way to ethics. So all of our programs actually have these elements. Okay, maybe some of us, they combine. For example, they combine practical skill with interpersonal skill in a single learning outcome. Otherwise, they would probably have 10. So if they follow exactly like this, they have 10. But we need to see the program standard for each the program, how the program standard lay out their learning outcome. So we need to follow the learning outcome from the program standards. So this is the generic one provided by MQA. So it depends on the governing body. For us is medical, dental council, Malaysian Dental Council. So we need to follow what they have given us for the program standards. Okay. So we will do this more in curriculum, course alignment later on. Okay. Okay. Next, this is CLO. CLO is upon completion of the course, and this related to specific skills, knowledge, or behavior. Um, Again, when I looked at the handbook that are provided by all of you, because from the handbook I can actually gauge what kind of expectation you have for every course in the BDS. I'm talking about BDS, huh? BDS. Um, we probably can have a better ones in the future if we have specific mapping. For example, some of you map to multiple PLO. From the CLO, you map to multiple PLO. That will be hard for us to calculate the KPI just now. Uh, so you will understand what I mean when I show that table later on in the series number 4. But for now, just try to appreciate the course learning outcome, program learning outcome, and course learning outcome is actually also have KPI. So later on, we will learn about this KPI, how to put the numbers. Probably we can calculate our own KPIs later on for every course. Okay, so this is course learning outcome. And then the last one is the specific learning outcomes. So specific learning outcomes is actually done for the topic. So if you are designing a curriculum, sorry, designing a topic or designing a course, for example, if you have one topic, for example, tooth colored restoration, for example, and tooth color restoration, you have several types of it, and several types of it, each type you need about 1 hour to teach. And so for general best practice method is every 1 hour lecture, every 1 hour lecture, it has to have around 2 to 3 specific learning outcomes. If you think that you have more than 3 learning outcome, maybe yours is more than 1 hour. So that is kind of the limit um, that you should have. All right. And if you ask me, where do I get this number? In the Padlet, I have attached the guide good practice by MQA about curriculum design book. Okay, curriculum design book. Let me open if I can show you now, share this tab. Okay. So if you open the Padlet here, program development and delivery, they do explain a little bit on the learning outcomes, what to do. And then also they have guideline to good practice for assessment. You were probably wondering, macam mana nak buat OSPI, how to do OSCE, how to formulate exam questions. It's actually available in MQA books. Okay, it's all here. And as a accreditation panel, what we did was if we couldn't find the program standard statement about that, so we will go back to the generic COPA. Generic COPA is the COPA that is made for certain programs. For example, master's program, PhD program. So they have their own generic COPA. If the generic COPA also does not address what we are looking for, we will go to the GGP, Guidelines to Good Practice by MQA. So it's all in here. So if you look at this, you probably understand, oh, why do I do this? Why I calculate as such, SLT, they have guide for SLT, they have guide for everything. But bear in mind that some of these guides are actually governed by our governing body. So our governing body is Malaysian Dental Council. Sometimes they have their own rules or regulation about certain things. So we need to read together these guidelines. Okay. So let me go back to the OBE. All right. So that is specific learning outcome. We almost done. Don't worry. So program structure. So I think during making the handbook, some of you asking me like, why do we need to have a program handbook? Why don't we have only course handbook? Okay, so I'm going to answer that now. So for program, normally we will give the handbook at the beginning of admission. So year one, for Bachelor of Dental Surgery student, we will give the program handbook to year one now. Okay, year one now. So whatever they have throughout the year, they are still using the same program handbook. Okay, but every program has many courses, right? Like this one, I just put 4 courses. So every courses, they have their own CLOs. Okay, they have their own CLOs, and these courses will have their own handbook. Remember when I mentioned you earlier of the talk, we need to give all the resources to the student to guide them to study on their own too. So this is the intention of the handbook. Okay, so we give them the CLO, and underneath the course there are topics, right? So every topic has also the SLO. Okay, SLO. Some of you have modules. Okay, and the modules dulu, many years back, we have MLO, module learning outcome. But nowadays we are not doing that because it's too much. Okay, so we're still using SLO for every module. If we use MLO, we have to do another set of document to map to the CLO. So we just don't do that because it's just too much for us to do it. Okay, life is short, so we have to make sure it's easier in a way, although it looks difficult for now, as of now. Okay, yes. Any question?
Yes, but what if we do have modules, so we don't have to map it?
If you have module, if you don't have module learning outcome, you don't have to map it. You just map to the CLO directly. Yeah.
So it means that even if I have modules, I should not create the module learning outcome.
Yes, yes. So the
All right.
module itself as an umbrella of the topic.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it's easier for you to not have MLO because then you will have multiple layers of mapping. If you have multiple of layers of mapping, your life will get really messy. Okay, so better not. So this is what we suggest for the current curriculum. Previous curriculum, before the current curriculum review, we have MLO, module learning outcome. So that has been abolished. Okay, that has been abolished. So we just use SLO all the way through. Okay, is it okay? If not, you can ask me later if you want. No problem. Okay, next. All right. When we do the learning outcomes, so the domains I mentioned to you is the learning domains. We follow the blooms. Okay. So all of you have heard bloom so many times. So just to show you, the outcome has to use the blooms learning taxonomies. And we divide it into three sets, which is cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. So if you understand this part, it will be a lot easier for you to do the assessment, to do the CQI. Okay, so if you have done this in your learning outcome, so you know exactly your learning assessment, oh sorry, your assessment method would be. So I'm just giving you example right now so that you have some ideas what to do. So if your learning outcome has cognitive domain, you can only assess them on the paper, okay, on the paper. But if your learning outcome has psychomotor, you need to assess them outside the paper. Maybe you can assess them in the clinic. Maybe you can assess them during case presentation, during seminar, during OSPE, during OSCE, those are the psychomotor skills. And then what about effective? Effective is about the same with psychomotor, nothing on the paper, but you can assess them during case presentation. But we need to be sure that for psychomotor and effective, when we assess the student for these domains, you need to have rubrics. Rubric is another story. Okay, it's a big story, which we're gonna work on that too. Psychomotor and effective is a bit more complicated, but if you understand from now, it's a slightly easier lah in the future. So effective literally means attitudes. Psychomotor literally means motor skills. Okay, what they do matters. Effective, what they behave matters. Okay, so we need our student to have these three domains in our course. Some of the courses they are heavy on cognitive. Some of the courses they are heavy on effective. It doesn't matter as long as you can achieve the outcomes. Okay, and just to highlight, if you making up the learning outcomes, please do not campur, please do not mix or have more than one domain. cognitive alone, psychomotor alone, affective alone. Do not mix cognitive and affective, if possible, if possible. But as you can see, even the program standard, their learning outcome also sometimes they have mixed, but not very many, very few of those. Okay, so but if you want to make your life easier in terms of assessment, in terms of CQI, try to make your learning outcome only one domain. Okay, life will be a lot easier if you do that. Okay, so that's my take home message lah. All right, I think this is a bit too much for Friday afternoon, but actually today we have covered planning number one. Okay, planning number one, and then a little bit of number two, developing number two. But will be more. The next session will do more on the developing number two here, which is more on the assessment and course alignment. Okay, so hopefully today you understood what is learning outcomes, what is OBE, especially to those new lecturers. I hope that you can at least appreciate what we are doing in our curriculum, how do we implement our teaching. Okay, our teaching is very important for our students and what to do in teaching. So if you have any questions for new lecturers, if you have any questions, please come to see us. I'm one of the noble committee. We have few noble committees in the faculty. So you can ask one of us about this later on, okay? And we will be talking about evaluation later on too. Okay, these are, I'm just to wrap up our session today. These are our references. If I say MQF, this is the MQF. And if I say COPA, this is the COPA. When I say MDC, Malaysian Dental Council, we are talking about the laws, okay? Dental Act. And this is COPA for postgraduate student dental. This is the main one. This is from MQA, but this is for dental. This is for the BDS. Okay, I'm sorry I didn't get for the diploma. But anyway, so these are the program standards and COPA. Okay, COPA is the main document. Inside the COPA, there is program standard. COPA is actually the framework of how the program should be designed, whereas program standard is what the program should have. I think that is just my thoughts about it. Okay, so COPA program standard comes together most of the time. So if you want to make sure your program is accredited by the Malaysian Dental Council MQA, you need to abide to your COPA and program standard. Okay, and then who govern us? As I mentioned many times, so UITM is our umbrella, but we are governed or monitored by MDC, Ministry of Higher Education, and definitely MQA. So these four agencies are looking after us to ensure our graduates are at par as other countries. Okay, so that's why when we do this, our graduates can actually apply for work, apply for postgraduate studies overseas better, easier. Okay, that's why they are doing this all the way through. And I think that's all from now. I think Datin can give the attendance. I think dah ada attendance ke? Tapi this one do not scan this one lah because Datin has her own attendance. This is for me at the exam. Okay, any questions? I open the floor for the questions. If you have any questions. Yes, Dr. Woody.
Dr. Nick, for the next session, could you explain a bit more on the dominant learning domain
Yes.
for the
Yeah, sure. Because that is actually part of the course alignment as well. So the
yeah.
constructive alignment would address all those learning domains and also how to make it up. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any more questions, please? New lecturers? I think there are a few new lecturers in here. If you have any question, please come to see us. You can see me anytime or message me so that all of us are at the same par, at the same level of understanding. And when the panel of accreditation come, they ask you question, you know what to answer. Because one of the comment is the lecturer does not know what it is. So it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? For us to have that kind of lecturer answer to the panel questions. So I have a question from someone. If our CLOs are only between C1 to C4, then our exam question should be within these CLOs. Yes, that is correct. We cannot go beyond the C4. Okay, we cannot go beyond to the C4. That's correct. Okay, so this one is going to be addressed in series number 3, which is the assessment workshop. Okay, I hope maybe one day we can have a physical workshop whereby we can do curriculum review together so that we know exactly the documents. I will share with you all the documents and all. All right, so I hope this session gives some benefits to all of you, especially to those a new one. To the seniors lecturer, thank you for joining us. Yes, Anna, giving you tests. You senior, you should answer 100%, so not 75%, 100%. And I know. Okay, any more question, ladies and gentlemen? Ada? Okay, thank you again for joining us this afternoon on Friday. Wishing you all the best and also a great weekend. Yes, Dr. Afiq.
Sorry, no, no, tak ada. Everything's good.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining again and see you to the next session. Thank you. Assalamualaikum and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Niji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
Thank you, Prof. Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. Stop presenting. Attendance kejap ya. Attendance giving to the chat right now. And also in the group. Thank you, everyone. So we go end the call. Right, tak boleh.